in this community, I'm sure there's a lot of people who know who you guys are, but I want to give you guys a chance to just talk about who you are, how long you've worked at Fantasy Flight, like what you're involved in now, what you're doing, how you're involved in the game, whatever kind of information you want to give to people. That would be amazing. Caleb, we'll start with you. So.
Yeah, I think you good?
Caleb is attempting to work the mic.
Alright.
Yep.
Get in there. You can take it off the
What's up?
You can take it off the rings.
Make sure that's working now. Too much? Not enough? Check. You good? No? What's that?
I'm a doctor,
Just pass it. This is cooperative interviewing where we just share resources.
You're going to errand ride with the mic back and forth.
Yeah, my name is Caleb Hathaway Grace. I just woke up. So I already forgot the question. What do you want me to say?
Introduce yourself to the community. There's probably some people on here who don't know who you are. I don't know why, but they would.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Caleb Grace, lead developer on Lord of the Rings for about 8 years now. It's been a pretty awesome ride, and just released Marvel is well, it's not released, but announced. That's the next thing I'm doing. That's really all I got, unless there's more you want to know. I would pass it to Matt.
Champion Star Trek player.
Oh, that's
Yeah, world champion Star Trek player, two-time.
Yeah.
Two-time. Anyway, I'm Matt Newman. I was also a developer on Lord of the Rings card game. Got hired in 2012, worked on that for about 4 years, and now I'm the lead developer for Arkham Horror, the card game, another cooperative LCG by Fantasy Flight Games. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And so, to make this a little more interesting, because many of us know who Caleb and Matt are from various interviews with our buddies at Cardboard of the Rings and things that you've done on the Great Company and my show. I think it's, I wanted to get into a little bit of fun here because it's very rare that Matt and Caleb get together on a show to do this. So I had them fill out a questionnaire about each other. Okay? So we're going to play a little game. And so, Caleb, I'm going to ask you a question about Matt, okay? Or no, sorry, Matt. I'm going to ask you a question, and then we're going to see what Caleb said about it. Okay, so Matt, what is your favorite cycle in the game?
My favorite cycle?
Yes.
It's the Dreamchaser cycle.
So it's the Dreamchaser cycle.
Whoa.
And of course, I asked Caleb what he thought Matt's favorite cycle was, and Matt said, or then Caleb said that, of course, he said it's Dreamchaser, right? So you guys know each other. But Caleb, what is your favorite cycle? What has been your favorite cycle to do?
a much harder one to answer. I feel for you. Honestly, don't know. That makes it really hard for you to guess. My favorite cycle, it's usually whatever I worked on most recently. Yeah. So I'll probably go with the Vengeance of Mordor cycle.
Yeah.
And you guys don't even know what it is yet, so. Well, I'll give you something to look forward to. It's pretty awesome.
It features vengeance.
Yes. And Mordor?
And Mordor, right? It features vengeance in Mordor. Okay, so, Caleb.
What did Matt guess?
No, it's different questions for each person, you know, because I wanted to lead in so that, you know, when you interview people, you don't have the same questions so you do stuff. So, okay, so, Caleb, okay, so I asked Matt this question. What is your favorite sphere? So, for those people who don't know, Caleb is an avid player of the game. So he plays the game, so does Matt, from what I understand. And so, what's your favorite sphere to play? And make sure it's not the same sphere that Matt gets.
My favorite sphere is definitely the bacon sphere. I just love to hear Jared say that. It never gets old. But actually, my favorite sphere to play is probably leadership. That's what I played when I was playing the game before I even started.
Right. So, Matt, what's your favorite sphere?
My favorite sphere is probably lore. because it's kind of tricky. They're not as strong stat-wise usually in like attack, defense, or willpower, so they kind of have to rely on their events and their card draw to get around that, and that's my kind of playstyle.
That's interesting. So far they know each other well enough that they both got each of that question correct for each other. So let's see here. So let's move along and Matt, encounter cards. You've designed one or two of those in your life, right? Yeah. Okay. So what was your favorite encounter card to design, or what is your favorite encounter card? For whatever reason, everybody can have different reasons. So
there is a right answer to this question.
Well, it gets harder as I go along. You know,
because I remember like 400 encounter cards. Here we go. Captain Sahir.
Oh, I was close. I was really close. I guess Nasia.
Okay, all right. That was very close. Very close. They're both kind of like unified, right? So
there are a couple. Sahir was up there. So, I guess Nasia because she became a hero.
So is that how you pronounce that name? Nasia? Nasia? It's okay.
I think I always said
Nasty.
nasty.
We'll edit that out for the listeners at home. And then we'll do a couple more of these, and then we'll move on to the exciting stuff. Let's see. I have to make sure I have all these notes, and I'm like, I don't know. I keep forgetting who's who here. Caleb.
Yeah.
What is your favorite player deck mechanic?
Favorite? Oh my gosh.
Favorite player deck mechanic?
This one's easy.
Is it?
This is like the new Newlywed Game. Like when I was thinking about this, I was like, make sure you answer the question.
Yeah, we're gonna have words after this.
Yeah.
Again, I'll just go with Cult of the New. I'll say the contracts. I'm having a lot of fun with those. That's not a mechanic?
That's not a mechanic. Yes. It's not a
I'm keeping my bag and spirit and my contracts. Back up.
I said side quests.
Oh yeah, that's
Good going, son.
when I've done so many brilliant things. How do I pick that?
And I actually have a question about the side quest mechanic a little bit, and not necessarily about the side quest mechanic, but
We get you to sit down next to me.
so me? Do I have to?
I think
But then you can cheat off
But I
my
think it makes
notes.
it easier to pass the microphone.
Oh man. Okay, I'll sit. Okay, if I can.
Where, I don't know, David want to be in maybe the middle here.
I'll be in the middle. I'll be an interviewer, and then I'll be like, so Matt, what do you think?
You're the filling in a designer sandwich.
It's so weird. I was hosting a podcast. I never get to see people out there, so this is like, it's like, oh, people. So the question is, I think we all know, but Caleb, you have card art in the game. Your card art in the game is
That's Stallion.
Italian. So Matt, I think that there's an FFG thing where after you work for 5 years, you get your card art in a game. Do you have card? I assume you've worked here for a while. You have card art in a game. It may not be in this game. Do you have what is it?
I do, but it's not out yet.
So what is it, Matt?
It's not in Lord of the Rings. Sorry. Yeah. But I've been told that I look similar to the Magali Boromir art, but not with pink hair. So earlier, yeah.
Could you imagine Boromir with pink hair? You could?
That's modern day boy.
But does that go on an art brief? It's like, so you have to design Boromir, but he's got to be pink hair, right? Okay, so that's good. It seems like you guys are a pretty good team here. You guys know each other pretty well. So let me just ask one more question about cards in the game. So, okay, Caleb, if you, if you could be any person from the LOTR books, not the game, okay, so you can't be Idran or Barivor, right? You have to be, you can't be Thalion, right? Who would you be?
All right, this is a tricky one because I think originally younger me would have been like a ranger, like Aragorn. And then I realized I really like sleeping in soft beds and just lounging around and taking it easy, so I'd definitely be a hobbit. Yeah. Whoever doesn't get the ring and go on an adventure, yeah. Like, maybe Patty Bolger.
Okay, so now, because I like the question so much, I'm going to ask the same thing. So I will say that Matt thought that you would be Faramir, so he went with your kind of original thing, right? You'd be a ranger, right? So what would you, if you could be anything from the books, what character would you be from the books?
That's really tough. I honestly don't know.
I knew.
You had that question?
Yeah.
Oh, he had that question. I don't know. Glorfindel.
Why?
Awesome, because he's an awesome elf. He's lived for like thousands and thousands of years. He's a total badass, and they don't even need him. They don't even need him. He can just chill at Rivendell, relax. Frodo's got it handled.
Wait, but that was Arwen, right? For some of you who don't know, so I opened up the questions to the community. There were about 35 or 40 questions from the community. This isn't my stick, it's the community's thing. So I wanted to make sure that I asked some questions that the community was interested in. So I wanted to ask a couple of design questions, and somebody said, one person with the community said, what is your method, or how is it that you select or choose or design a card that belongs to a specific sphere? Like, how do you make that decision, or how is that decision arrived at? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
You want to go first, Matt? Because you can dig at him because he made a short joke for you.
So in game design, we often talk about the difference between top-down design and bottom-up design. A card that's designed bottom-up is designed with its mechanics first, and then you kind of apply a theme or a reason to it, a logic behind it after the fact. Whereas a card that's designed from the top down, we figure out what the theme is, we figure out who the character is, what they do, and then we design the mechanics based around that. So I think it kind of depends, the answer, depending on what kind of card it is. If it's a card that's designed bottom up, then it's kind of easy. Is it a card that deals with enemies? Probably goes in tactics. Is it a card that gives you card draw or heals? Then maybe it's in lore, that sort of thing. But if it's a top-down design, then it's maybe a little trickier. You kind of based on the character or what they're doing or the theme behind the card, that might change that.
So Caleb, to lead off of that question, can you give us an example of a top-down card design that, so it's pretty obvious the bottom-up design, but a top-down design, is there something that comes to mind when you think about that? Okay.
Follows the trap, right? Yeah. What's funny is I think that one's actually a bottom up for me where it started with tactics traps. I was I want to put traps in tactics. How will a tactics trap work? It'll work off of minions engaged with you rather than stuff in the staging area. Lore wants to keep things out there, tactics wants them up close. So that could have been a good example of top down if I thought of the effect first and then looked for the sphere to put it in. Instead, I really thought of I want a trap in tactics. Then what does that look like? So as far as top down, it usually starts with characters. I think usually it starts with someone we want a new character, a new version of Aragorn in the game, and we want him to be the ultimate fighter. Okay, what's he gonna do? What does that look like? Where does he end up? Well, he ends up in tactics. What's funny though is so Matt's answer's spot on, but then there's also these times where you end up having to make weird choices just because you need the Black Rider's box. You're gonna have 4 heroes, 1 for each sphere, and then it becomes a thing of well, I know I'm gonna put this one in this sphere and this one in this. That leaves these 2 spheres. Who goes where? And
Maddie and Spirit.
Right.
That's what's Pippin in lore.
Yeah, and that was kind of funny. Yeah, the Pippin and lore, everyone's really? And I was well, yeah, he knew his way around the Shire. It's actually, you go back and you reread those, and he's oh, I know this place. That's. No, he didn't say the maps of Rivendell. That's where he got in trouble. I think that was Mary. So yeah, mostly we try to do top down, bottom up, but every once in a while you get a curveball and you just gotta like make the best of it.
And this is a shout out to our designer, or not our designer, our host, John Peace and Thought Rogers. He said, what was your favorite cycle to design, and why was it the Dreamchaser cycle? So, again, I'll start with Matt because that's obviously his favorite cycle, but the first part of the question is obviously the one, like, what was your favorite cycle to design?
So actually, the Dreamchaser cycle is my favorite cycle, but I don't think it was my favorite to design. It had a lot of moving parts, and it was kind of stressful at times trying to figure out how the boats would work and how all of
How many iterations? How many iterations?
We did at least 5 or 6 different iterations of the sailing mechanic, and also the boarding mechanic. So yeah, that one, design-wise, I think the Angmar cycle was my favorite to design because we kind of tag-teamed that one, and it was really interesting because he did the Lost Realm box, and I did the cycle that followed it, and he had Iarion in there, and I had Amarthiel, and they kind of like took the reins of the storytelling as I did. So it was kind of interesting how that played out. So I think that was my favorite one to design. Yeah.
Same question, Caleb. Why was it the Dreamchaser? No, I'm just kidding. So what was your favorite cycle to design?
Yeah, Dreamchaser definitely, because I didn't do anything. I was busy on something else. Yeah, again, I'll just roll with the Cult of the New, and I'll say Vengeance of Mordor, because as already it's been kind of spoiled by Andrew Navarro on the AMA, we went into it knowing it was going to be the last regular cycle for a while, and so that gave us a really fun perspective of like, how do we cap this off and leave it in like the best possible place with like years and years and years of replayability, and that's where contracts came out of. And also I was, as I mentioned, getting pulled into Marvel development as well, so here I was kind of sunsetting one period of a game and launching another, and so I had to ask for help. There's just a lot to juggle at once, and that was actually turned out to be a real strength of the design, was asking anybody and everybody on the team, who wants a chance to design a scenario? You know, and what we ended up getting were some like 6 very different scenarios with some really interesting ideas. And
like what, Caleb?
well, there's this.
What's the third scenario gonna look like?
There's this one where they fake the moon landing.
Yeah.
So it's like a river.
And so let's talk about this. And I understand that you guys may or may not be able to say anything to this, but you know, it was a little bit of an announcement to us when a month ago, you know, Andrew Navarro hit the AMA and said, "Hey, there's going to be a." My joke at the beginning, right? It's not, you know, we're going to pause, but we're not going to do it. Is there anything that you can give us here to like, as about the what it's going to look like, or a timetable, or like whatever? Like, you may not be able to, but you know, like enough people asked when I asked for questions. It was like I got 50 responses, and 25 were like, "What's the next? What's it going to look like?" So I'm going to hand this to Caleb.
Yeah, you don't get this one.
That's fine. Well, I
So-
just want you to get this wrong.
Sure. Yeah, Matt's in the clear. I'll get to talking to later. No, I was actually, so we knew Andrew was going to do this AMA. We did not know that question was going to come up, and we didn't know that he was going to answer. So it was kind of exciting. I was like talking to Chad at the same time, just casually or something. Yeah, Chad Garland House. I think we were texting or something. All of a sudden his phone blew up. He was like, "What in the world's going on?" And he told me, he's like, "Are you watching the AMA?" I'm like, "No, why?" He's like, "Oh, he just said that the game's going to take a pause after this cycle." I was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I knew that, but I didn't know he was going to tell everyone else yet. So what he didn't say that I kind of have to own is that the idea of taking a break after this cycle, that was actually my idea. That was something I wrote into the vision document for the Shadow Niece box and the Vengeance of Mordor cycle. It was sort of like, hey, we're at a really good spot right here. If we're going to, like, you'd rather end on a strong note than to have, like, all these ideas that you didn't get to because suddenly, like, the plug was pulled and you didn't know. And that's happened, unfortunately, with some of our LCGs where, due to licensing issues or whatever else, like, there were all these great ideas that were still in development that never reached maturity. And we didn't want that to happen. So it was sort of like, as I'm transitioning and sort of the writing feels like it's on the wall, like, hey, let's go out on a real strong note. Let's leave people with something they can be really excited about and feel really good, and then when we come back stronger than ever. So there was, like I mentioned earlier, the inspiration for Contracts came out of that. The inspiration for a lot of the themes in the cycle really came out of this, and I think the story of the cycle was like, all right, if this is going to be like kind of our last opportunity to tell a story for a while, how do we leave a really lasting and fun impression? So that was also, the box is out, right? Like the secret's like spoiled, right? Yeah. Have you guys all played Shadows in the East, or you kind of aware of the story? So yeah, we got really, really excited for like, all right, if this is going to be the last story, then who's the big bad going to be? We've had some pretty awesome villains like Sahir, like Dakenar, some like memorable people that you're like, maybe memorable in a way that makes you want to throw things at us, But in terms of story, I thought it'd be kind of fun. Like, I like when something ends that it goes full circle and ties things out real neat. Like, I always point to Star Trek Next Generation, All Good Things, as being like one of the best series enders of all time, really tied it off. And so I was trying to think of a way we could do that, and Matt and I talked about it. Matt's been involved, even though he's like on Arkham, constantly bouncing ideas off him, and the other team as well. We're like, why don't we see if we can bring back Alcaron? He was like the first big bad that we wrote in the story. If you don't remember, it's the Against the Shadows cycle. That's when Christian Peterson got really involved in writing the story, and I have to confess, I wasn't sold at first. Like, I didn't completely buy in. He was setting it up like, it's going to be great. He's going to be your ally for a while, and then he's going to betray you, and people are going to lose their minds. And I'm like, are people even going to care? I don't know. When I played Lord of the Rings, at that point, I mostly just played the game, and I wasn't paying a lot of attention to the story. But I think he was spot on. Like, the reaction was pretty great. People were like, I hate that guy, And so I went back and like reread the story. Like, does he like for sure die, or is there a chance that maybe he could be like resurrected or something? So I went back and read, and it's like, there's no like grisly details of his demise. It's more just like, you've defeated him. I was like, okay, we could work with that. Like, especially like where he died. Yeah, right. They faked his death and the moon landing. So I also like the idea that he was defeated in the Morgul Vale, which is like the city of like the undead, and dark sorcery and stuff. So I thought, wouldn't that be cool if like he might have died, but like Sauron and his minions are like so cruel they like wouldn't let him. Right? They're like keep him alive with like this dark power, and so like every breath for him is like torment. And so all he can think about is getting revenge against the people that like, foiled his plans and gotten in trouble with Sauron. And so I was like, now we're getting somewhere. Plus, we know we want the story, to go to Mordor. It's like it's the place we haven't gone yet outside of the saga, And so it's like, what's going to get us into Mordor? Like that's obviously we can go there, but we need a compelling reason, or it just feels kind of forced. And I was like, well, we know that this guy is from Mordor. That was like in his backstory at the end of Against the Shadow. Like Christian wrote an entire epilogue about his real name is Ulcor, and he has like an estate in the land of Nirn, and he's got slaves, and he's just a bad guy. And I thought, there's stuff we can do with that too, and that's pretty much all I can say at this point about it. But that was like the whole process behind that, and that's why I'm really excited for the cycle. And hopefully, when we get there, you guys will be too.
So I think I speak for the community that this was an amazing discovery once we figured it out for the Thane Alcor, right? So in that same vein, I have to ask: is there a plan, be it formal or informal, for like how long the break may be, or like what's going to happen after the break? And okay, so Matt, if and I don't know what you can say again, how long is the break, and what's the plan afterwards? Is it Gen Con? I always, in my own head, I'm thinking, are you just going to do Gen Con only stuff, or I don't know. So, but there you go.
So the short answer is like I can't really answer because I don't really know. We don't really know. So the door is not closed. In the opposite of the immortal words of Galadriel, the door is not closed, but we can't really say much more than that. Yeah.
And I think we as a community can definitely respect that, and we just appreciate a great 9-year run. It's been amazing, and we're going to definitely love whatever comes out after this. So as promised, I said we were going to move to a little bit of a competitive game format. We did a little cooperative, like, hey, Matt, how well do you know the guy you work with? And this is, I see Bjorn walking away. This is named after his website. You have a blog, right? So we're going to call this.
Where do you think you're going?
He doesn't need to stay here, but I wanted to point him out. So this is inspired by his card search engine. For those people who don't know, you can go to hallofbayorn.com and .com, right? I just have it always up all the time. Yeah, right. And but damn it, he runs that, and it's been the foremost resource for all players playing. So, but I'm going to play a game called Hall of Bayorn Autofill. Okay? So this is what happens. If you guys don't know, if you search a card and you start typing in the first couple letters of that card, the Hall of Bayorn card search engine will show you all the cards with that few letters in it. Okay? So the example I have, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and forth, and the designer that isn't able to name a card with that set of letters in it loses. Not loses, but loses a point. We'll go negative.
Loses their job.
Yeah, right. I talked to Christian Peterson. He said your job's on the line. It's crazy. So the example that I came up with is if you type in Thran, okay, Thran, obviously you're searching for what card? What? No, I'll just start. So what's? No, go ahead. What's the? Thranduil. But there's another card that pops up as it autofills the thing, and that would be Mithrandir's Advice, because it has Thran in it. Okay? So, but those are the only two cards that pop up when you type Thran. Okay? And then what we'll do is to get a little bit of audience participation, if they stall out, whoever loses, and we'll do like the backstab, and then but then we'll let the audience continue to fill in the thing, right? Because I'm sure you guys use Dan. So I think it's important also to thank Dan for the awesome job he's done maintaining that site forever and ever. He never wants to take any credit for Dan. Awesome stuff. Okay, so the first one is going to be a little bit of a low-hanging fruit. Okay, this is the one that I always type in and I get 1 million hits. Okay, so I have a pen, I have the answers, and we're gonna go. And so the search would be if you were gonna type in D-A-I-N. Dane, D-A-I-N. And we'll start with Matt.
Okay.
Dane Ironfoot.
Dane Ironfoot is one of them. Okay, go ahead. I win! Wait.
Yeah, I can't believe you let him. What's that?
Think attachments core set. And it doesn't have to start with Dane.
Hold on. Just to take on my phone.
Right. wait.
This is gonna be a really slow game. He's telling me what it is. Oh, doing it again!
Okay.
I will only ever get this if it's like the first word. If it's like in the middle of something, yeah, I'm not.
So the thing is that Dane, when you search Dane on Dan's site, you get all the Dunedain attachments, right? Okay, so out there, so Matt, how many of those can you name? You know, I have them all, and I don't know if it's limited, so there's a bunch. Okay. Oh, so now he's saying, he's got this stuff, right? Okay, here, okay.
Go ahead. What do you got?
Oh, sure, I know the cards. I can't guess the letters in the middle of them. But yeah, there's Dunedain Remedy, there's Dunedain Signal.
Remedy what?
Whoa, we have to trade back and forth?
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Dunedain Cash.
Dunedain Cash. I took 2 in a row.
Dunedain Watcher.
Signal.
Watcher?
Signal. Dunedain Watcher. Not on the list. Watcher. Oh, wait, no, it is. Are we just guessing cards with Dunedain in the title? Apparently.
That is the Dunedain Hunter.
It's a Dunedain Hunter, okay.
There's a Dunedain Mark.
There is a Dunedain Mark. Okay. You guys thinking out there too, right?
I'm slowing down.
Yeah.
We did the mark, the signal, the cast. Oh my gosh. I'm slowing down, yeah. You got one more?
Does he get -2 then for that?
I don't got it.
Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more that the card search comes up with. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so
Dunedain pipe is on the list. Yes. Okay, so okay. Yep.
Is there lookout? Like a
Dunedain lookout. Let's see, that's on the list too. Yes, I have to fold it over because I have my answers to the next one.
take a look. I got another one back there.
Yeah, go ahead. What is it? Remedy, Dunedain Remedy. Yes, good. That was already said. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Pathfinder, Dunedain Pathfinder. Right, yeah, Kyle. What did you say? Message, Dunedain Message, yes. Any other Dunedain? So, the thing is that when I play Dine, Ironfoot, I always search to see what he is. And when to put my podcast, I put the card on the screen so everybody can see it. So when I search Dine, it gets a million of these. So that's why I did this. So there's still, so we'll close it there. We'll close it there. But there's Dunedain Warning, Dunedain Quest, Dunedain Wanderer, and there may be others, but this was the limited. I mean, there's a million of them, right? And so, should we try one more? Yeah, right. Okay, so we're at the Con of the Rings. So Caleb, I'll let you go first. So the 3-letter search is going to be con, C-O-N. If I type the word con, C-O-N, do you know what it is?
He's totally just handing me the answer.
Pony in the trap.
Pony in the trap, right? Right? Yeah, there's 4. This one is 4. How about out there? Yeah, go ahead. Light the beacons. Light the beacons. Pony in the trap. Light the beacons. I think he's the real winner today.
Is there like a constable?
There is not. Unless it's coming out.
No.
There's a sheriff, though. That's part of my problem, honestly. Like, the other 2 have number references.
The hard part for me is sometimes I get mixed up in my head. Like we use sometimes different names when we're playtesting. So Dunedain Pipe, for example, I think that was Ranger Pipe for like a really long time. So in my head, it's still Ranger Pipe. So I would never have guessed Dunedain Pipe. Even though that's the name. So sometimes we'll change those at like the last minute before we go to print. So we'll start talking about a card and be like, oh, you mean this one, don't you? Like, oh, yeah. So another C-O-N? Oh, my God.
It's got a number. Second breakfast. Yes. And then what's
There's one more. And I think it's we said Coney in a Trap. Yeah, Brace of Conies was not on the list because I'm not sure if the thing is, and so I didn't even. I know, right? Stop it. I know, right? The last one was Second Call, which I'm not sure. That's still it pops up. So anybody with a phone can check that out. We'll do this one more time because this one has a million of them, and I think Caleb, you'll be able to do this.
We'll get at least one.
Right, especially if you watched very recent episodes of my podcast.
Without you like handing
Right.
me the answer.
Right. So it's con. We just did con, right? And so we can't do of, we can't do the, but we can definitely do ring. Ring, right?
Ring of power.
Okay, so go ahead. So we'll start here, and I'm gonna live.
All right, so Ring of Power.
Let's see. Ring of power is on the list. Yes. It's the last one too.
Magic ring.
Magic ring. Yes, that's on the list.
There go the easy ones.
Ring of power. Magic ring. This one actually had the most. Who'd have thought?
Ring mail.
Ring mail. Yes, ring mail. Oh, you didn't think I'd get that one, did you? Neither did I.
I didn't hear you.
bar here. Bring a bar here.
The Ring of Barahir.
Good job! I'm so good at this game.
Oh my gosh. Oh, sure, Bilbo's Magic Ring.
Yeah, Bilbo's Magic Ring! Woo! It's a different card, though. It's a different card.
Is there a card with like bring them to me? I don't know
You
why.
have the right idea.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a bunch of... there's at least one person. Maybe.
Nah, I'm out. I got nothing.
I got one. Yeah. I'm a little ashamed this wasn't my first guess. The One Ring.
One ring! Sure.
That's kind of an important card in the game. I forgot about that one.
Anybody play Hobbits?
What's that? What's this one?
What?
Smoke rings!
Smoke Rings? That's a good one.
Smoke rings, that's good. Thror's ring. The Ring of Thror, right? Yeah. That's one of the most erased. Yeah. Clam drain.
What else? Anybody else out there have a ring? What's that? Okay, so we'll finish it up. There's Wandering Took. There's Muster Ring the Rohirrim. There's Fellowship of the Ring. Wandering Ent. Inspire Ring Presence. Barter Ring. Do you like the way I'm emphasizing ring every time I say that? There's the Woodman's Clearing. Gather Ring Storm, the Master Ring, the Ruling Ring, all the master cards that you, yeah. So anyways, okay, that's our little competitive mode, so now we get to take a break for an undetermined amount of time. No, I'm just kidding. Like right when we introduce the best part of the game, then it's all good. But one of the things that I really wanted to do while we were here with the guys that really developed the game, it'd be great if Nate were around, is I wanted to talk a little bit about like really abstracting things from the book into the game. Okay, so like some of it's really easy. So if a character has a high attack, like that's an easy concept for us to understand. The character's strong, he's got some ways to kill enemies, whatever it is. But there's some things that we just don't really get in terms of like what are you trying to get at in terms of what it means. For example, the best example is like Caldara. Like what is that? Like what is that supposed to represent? So Caldara, for those of you who don't know, you get to sacrifice Caldara and then you bring out what is it? Two. This is maybe three, right? Hero or allies of this, right? So do you have an idea of like what that means, or at least something related to that sort of thing? So who gets that?
So for Caldara, I think it's important to note that the discard pile doesn't always mean dead. Like, it doesn't always mean that they stepped in front of an arrow and now they're gone forever, especially since we have cards that can bring them back. So I've always, and I think it's open to interpretation on purpose so that you can craft the story that you want to craft around it. I've always viewed Caldara as like a messenger going to get help. So she leaves and then comes back with her, entourage of people who then show up and save the day. But someone else might view that differently. Maybe she, like martyrs herself for the cause, and then a bunch of people are rallied because of it, or something like that. So.
Okay, so in that same vein, and I'll ask Caleb, I know that you play some Sylvans. I had you on the show and we talked about Galadriel and you play Sylvans and stuff. So what is that like bouncy Sylvan thing? So Sylvans, for those of you who don't know, have a lot of like when enter play effects and a lot of things that can pull them back into your hands. Tree People is the very most obvious choice there, but there's also one for every sphere, and then the new one, the whole host of the Galadrim, which we're gonna play that at Helm's Deep, John. The host of Galadrim. Okay, so shout out to my friends at Hardcore of the Rings, but so what is that supposed to represent?
Yeah, I was very deliberate about that design with the Sylvan Elves. We had done dwarves already at that point, some Rohan, some Gondor, and I was really excited to bring elves, and especially Sylvan Elves, to the front for the Ringmaker cycle. And when I thought about it, my mind went to that part of the Fellowship of the Ring where Frodo and the rest of the Fellowship that survived Moria, they meet Haldir and his cousins, or his brothers, and they meet them at the edge of the woods. And their first introduction is like, hey, don't move, we're being watched. They say they could like shoot you in the dark, you know, like, and they don't even know they're there yet, you know, and you don't really get a real sense of like how many of them are there, you know, and I like that idea of you get this story within a story that's just kind of hinted at least I did it reading it as a kid. It was really magical to me, this idea of like, here's this forest, and they suggest like it's magically guarded, but for sure there are elven sentries on the borders. And how there makes a comment about there's more orcs than there are of us, but they never get in. You know, and it's just kind of giving this idea of like almost like guerrilla warfare at the edge of the forest here, where they're just a few people are able to make a lot of ruckus and do a lot of damage because they're disguising their numbers. They're only appearing to strike and then fading back into the forest. And it was really different from like the way Rohan would just gallop into battle. You know, like just a huge cavalry roll. So I wanted to find a way to represent that in the game of like, here's how playing the elves feels so different from playing Rohan or dwarves or Gondor. And so I really like that idea of like, they show up and they have this huge impact when they do, and then they kind of fade back into the trees, and then they might show up again. And so that just became the playstyle of like, every other playstyle, with the exception of Rohan, because they have a discard mechanic. But it was mostly just like, you have a dwarf, you play a dwarf. You gotta have a Gondor, you play a Gondor, and they just start to stack up over time. And what's funny about that, you mentioned the Host of the Galadrim. And that really came out of a game I played with Dan from Hollabayorn last year. Matt and I played Dan, and I'm sorry, I forget who else was playing that game. And I was playing my Sylvans, he was playing his dwarf, and his dwarf just kept ramping up. And I was getting frustrated, like, I'm doing pretty well on my side, but my Sylvans will never actually reach these numbers because dwarves just keep getting bigger, and I kind of bounced in and out and plateau at a point. So I was like, I want to give the elves a card that's like, hey, watch this. we can spike to those heights as well now. And that's, you know, and that's true to the books too, because again, it's like, you're so used to seeing them fade in and out, but then in the appendix, you know, we learned that Celeborn did lead the army from Lorien across the river to attack Dol Guldur directly and did some damage that way. So yeah, just the idea was that you play them, that's them, you know, showing up, doing their thing, and then you play these other cards that return them to your hand. That was really exciting to me, and I was glad it seemed like it resonated with people. Matt was actually a huge encouragement doing that, because Matt was like, this is awesome! This is really fun to play! I'm like, sweet!
That's great. So let me ask, we'll do this for a couple more questions, and then I'll make sure that I wrap up. And so, a couple of other questions about abstracting game ideas. So when you have multiple heroes, okay, so like there's three different I call them regular play Aragorns, right? And so like when the Spirit Aragorn comes out, like what does that mean that you have different heroes in different spheres? Is that supposed to represent different times in their life or different abilities, or, you know, like, because they all have the same statistics, same attributes, but I know they have different abilities, but like what is that in terms of like the lore?
So I think it depends on the character. For some characters, it's just that they have many facets to them, and they can take on different roles depending on what they're trying to do in that moment. So for Boromir, he's a very skilled warrior, but he's also a leader of men, and he rallies, you know, his troops if he's leading an army or something like that. So that's why he appears in those two spheres. But for someone like Aragorn, or an elf who's very long-lived, and he's lived a very long life, he's done a lot of different things. So for Aragorn, and he's taken on different titles even too. So I've always viewed Aragorn's different spheres as being different times in his life. The times when he's striking out on his own as a ranger, as Strider, or maybe the times where he's part of Gondor's army as Thoringil. And these are, you know, different aspects of him as a character.
Solid.
But you didn't mention anything about Spirit Aragorn, so what's that going to represent when we run? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. One more question here, and then again. I'll
represent the end of the
Okay. So somebody submitted, why is it that Noldor are so like complex to play? Like what's the theory behind that sort of thing?
Oh, okay, it's
the short answer is I made them. No, I think it's just because the discard from hand mechanic, it adds like a secondary resource to all of the cards in your hand. They now all of a sudden can do two different things. They can do what they say, or they can do what these other cards allow you to discard them to do. So to me, that's probably why. Although I've never found it to be that complicated. But I guess like if you're adding a secondary function to every single one of your cards, yeah, I could definitely see that.
We do
Also,
this for a living.
but that's true. Also, a lot of them have abilities that you can play from your discard pile, so you kind of have to be aware of that. You have to realize that they're in there and know when best to use them. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a chance for me to pat Matt on the back. Like he was an encouragement to me with the Sylvans. I really like what you do with the Noldor because to me, it wasn't a conversation we had where we said this is what this is. But the Noldor to me are like they're in Middle Earth. They're some of the oldest, wisest elves, and for me, the discard pile and their ability to interact with it kind of represents like just the years of knowledge that they have. Like nothing to them is like lost. They have very long memories. So you might discard Elven Light, to draw a card, to gain a resource, put it there, or what's the one that boosts them all? The
Lords of the Eldar.
The Lords of the Eldar, yeah. And I really like the theme of that I can play these. Like the Lords of the Eldar can only play from my discard pile. It's like we have to remind ourselves we're pretty badass. Like we can do some good stuff if we decide to leave Rivendell for a minute, So I love the theme of it. The way again, like it felt very on point. Like the Sylvan felt to me, the Noldor felt the same way. Like this is a way of capturing just their long years of wisdom.
That's phenomenal. And so what I want to do is before we wrap up. I think we have a special presentation from Stephen Redmond over here, who is a community, has been part of the community for a lot of years. So Stephen, I'm going to hand Stephen the mic, and Stephen, here you go.
Hi, my name is Stephen. I'm a playtester for Lord of the Rings, the card game, and as a playtester, Caleb gives us a lot of gifts. Like we get to call cards bikes, boats, long before anybody else. So, but we don't really have an opportunity to give back to him except our feedback. We're scattered.
Helping me do my job. Making sure my game doesn't suck. Yeah, you're really stingy, Steve.
So, we're scattered all over the country and even the world, but mostly here in the U.S. And we don't see each other very often, and we mostly interact electronically, like many of you do probably. And we really wanted to give back something to Caleb, especially because he's just such a great person to work for. Like it's just a lot of fun to play test with Caleb. So we decided we'd make a playmat for him. And it's not that original, don't get too excited. So we reached out to FFG's lawyers and asked if we could use the art for his 5-year card, made by Alexander Parks. And I reached out to Alexander, who's Polish, and a really nice guy. Excellent at translating my very specific instructions. He extended the art a little bit, he added a border to it, and we have a little special message for you on the front. And then we sent the playmat around the U.S. to gather signatures and messages from the various playtesters. So this has been to California, it's been to D.C., it's been a lot of places. So thank you and enjoy.
Well, using this playmat, each treachery card you reveal gains certain. Holy smokes, we're running. Those was from Jen.
That's game test.
Yeah, that's
We tried.
So that's so funny that you say, like, you don't have a chance to do anything for me. Because for real, like, this game would be terrible without the playtesters. Like, Tony knows, he's been playtesting forever. It would suck, right? Yeah. He's got my back. But thank you so much. That's incredibly nice. Like, no joke, this morning, I got up thinking, like, I'm running over to Con of the Rings where, you know, local people are just putting it on for themselves, and all I have to do is show up and be a part of it. And it's just weird for me to think. For like 8 years now, I've been like a part of this community. Not just part, but I've been a significant part. But only significant because you all decided that I was. And it's really touching. This is like mind-blowing. This is super nice. So I really want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everybody that plays the game. Everybody who sits down and listens and asks me questions. And just your passion that you share with me really motivates me. Like with every set, I just want to give you guys the best thing because I feel like you're always giving me just like the best experience. Like developing for this game, I could be developing for any other game, you know, and it might just be a job. But developing for this community is like, it's such a treat. Every time I go to Gen Con or a fellowship event or Con of the Rings or anytime I get an email question, people are so encouraging when they write. They'll say like, hey, how does this work? And I'll write back. And I'll just say something like, you know, hope you're enjoying whatever cycle, you know, the question originated in. And they'll often write back and say, yeah, I love it. Thank you for everything you do. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, that's just, every time I get an email, I often get like a compliment back. And it means a ton. It means a ton, you know. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's super nice. Steve, it's upside down to me. When you talk about, like, you don't get to do stuff with me, like, I'm always thinking, I got to do stuff for you guys. Like, because it's such a huge help. You know, I do get paid. You know? These guys volunteer their time. You know, that's huge. So thank you very much to all of you, and a special thanks to my playtesters and community leaders.
Well, I just wanted to just say one more time, thank you to the organizers for the event. This has been a blast for me. This has been amazing. And of course, the game would never be the game that we all know and love if it weren't for these two. And Nate also, and all the other people that are involved in the office. I mean, it's just what you guys have done for me specifically in terms of this game has been life-changing, I'll say that. So thank you. So that's it. That's the designer interview. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Pay attention.
And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.